The story begins on an ordinary night when a quiet household suddenly became the center of one of the most mysterious and powerful events in Israel's history. The door opened and King David himself stood outside, shaken, breathless, and carrying the weight of a tragedy that had unfolded earlier that day. Behind him, covered with a cloth but unmistakable in its shape, was the Ark of the Covenant. Without ceremony or explanation, David pushed it inside and stepped back as if he could not bear to remain near it. Before anyone could question him, he left, leaving a simple man named Obed-Edom in the presence of an object that had brought both terror and awe to nations. The Ark of the Covenant had long been the symbol of divine presence, holiness, and unapproachable power. It had gone before armies, brought victory, and struck down those who treated it carelessly. It had been captured by the Philistines, and wherever it remained, plagues spread, idols fell, and fear gripped the land. Israel rejoiced when it returned, believing that God's favor had come back to them. David intended to bring it into Jerusalem in a grand procession, but one mistake changed everything. Instead of carrying it the way the law prescribed, on the shoulders of the Levites, they placed it on a cart. When the oxen stumbled, Uzzah reached out to steady it, and the moment his hand touched the ark he fell lifeless to the ground. Panic spread. The music stopped, the celebration collapsed, and David felt fear like he had never felt before. The ark, which symbolized God's nearness, now seemed like a threat. No one wanted to approach it, and it stood in the road, silent and terrifying. David knew he could not bring it into the city. He looked around for someone willing to house it temporarily, someone whose home stood near enough to the procession but far enough from Jerusalem to give him time to understand what had gone wrong. That was when he turned to Obed-Edom. Obed-Edom was not a prominent figure. He had no royal authority, no priestly fame, and no reputation that distinguished him from the many Levites scattered across the land. He lived a humble life in Gath-Rimmon, working with his hands, raising his family, and honoring God in quiet ways. Nothing about him suggested that he would one day carry a responsibility heavier than any king's throne. Yet destiny often finds those who are not looking for it. When David arrived with the ark, Obed-Edom received it without protest. He knew the stories, knew the danger, knew what had just happened on the road. But reverence filled his heart, and he accepted the sacred object into his home. The ark stood in the center of his house, a silent reminder of God's holiness. The early days were filled with caution. Every movement demanded care. Every word spoken in the home carried weight. Obed-Edom likely gathered his family to impress upon them the seriousness of what had entered their dwelling. The ark was not an ornament. It was not a relic. It represented the very presence of the Almighty, a presence that could bring life or death depending on how it was honored. And so the family lived with a reverence deeper than fear, rooted in respect for the sacred. Days passed, and the household began to notice changes that went beyond emotion or atmosphere. There was peace unlike anything they had known before. The air felt lighter, the nights were restful, and harmony settled into the home. Arguments quieted, anxieties faded, and what once burdened their hearts seemed to dissolve. The presence in their home did not destroy them. Instead, it transformed them. What was sacred brought not terror but life, and the invisible began to shape the visible. Soon blessings became too evident to ignore. Crops flourished beyond expectation. Animals grew stronger, multiplied, and produced more than in previous years. What Obed-Edom touched prospered. Illnesses disappeared. Strength returned to those who were weak. The household grew and vitality spread through every part of their lives. The 3 months in which the ark remained in their home became a period of extraordinary abundance and renewal. Word spread quickly. Neighbors noticed. Travelers heard stories. Relatives whispered about what was happening in the home of this simple Levite. Eventually the reports reached King David. The ark that had brought fear now brought blessing. The same object that caused death when dishonored brought prosperity when respected. David realized something profound. The problem had never been the Arkansas. It had been the careless way they approached the sacred. The law had given clear instructions on how the ark was to be handled, and when those instructions were ignored, the consequences followed. But Obed-Edom had received the ark with reverence, and therefore the blessings poured out. When David finally understood, he prepared to bring the ark into Jerusalem properly. He summoned the Levites, studied the law, and organized a procession that honored every instruction given to Moses. When he arrived at the house of Obed-Edom, The moment must have been filled with emotion. David stood once more before the man who had carried the responsibility he himself feared. He announced that the ark would return to Jerusalem, but this time carried as God commanded. For Obed-Edom, the request was bittersweet. He could have felt relief that the weight of guarding the ark would be lifted. But something had changed within him during those 3 months. The presence that had filled his home had also filled his heart. The blessings had been extraordinary, but what mattered most was the presence itself. He could not imagine returning to life without it. And so he did something few would have the courage to do. He left his home, his land, and his old life, and he followed the ark to Jerusalem. Obed-Edom became one of the official guardians of the ark in the tabernacle. His descendants followed in his footsteps, serving as gatekeepers and ministers in the house of God for generations. His name, once obscure, became part of the lineage of those who protected the sacred. He had stepped into a calling that reshaped the course of his family forever. The blessings he received in 3 months multiplied into a destiny that lasted lifetimes. His story stands as a testament to the power of reverence, obedience, and openness to the sacred. The presence of God did not destroy his home because he honored it. It did not overwhelm him because he approached it with humility and respect. And in receiving what others feared, he encountered a transformation deeper than any miracle or blessing. His life shifted from ordinary to extraordinary, not because he sought greatness, but because he welcomed the presence that brought it. The 3 months that the ark rested in his home left a mark on history. They revealed that the presence of God is not dangerous to those who honor it, but life-giving. They showed that blessings follow obedience and that transformation follows reverence. They demonstrated that anyone, no matter how unknown or ordinary, can become a vessel of divine purpose when the sacred is welcomed with integrity. Obed-Edom's legacy endures as a reminder that what enters a life with holiness leaves it forever changed.